We're good? Okay, we'll call the meeting to order.
You want to unmute me?
At 2:03.
Yep.
I'd like to welcome everyone this afternoon. I'd like to introduce the committee members. To my far right, past chair Art Galazzi. To Mr. Galazzi's right is Melinda McGregor. To my left, Mr. Wayne Greco. And going to be hopefully attending us very shortly, Mr. Joe Greco. Michelle?
Mr. Chair, just quickly, we need to have an election for chair for this year, 2022. If I could ask that you vacate the chair position and I'll take over.
Thank you, Michelle.
If I could have a nomination or any nominations for chair.
I will move that Mr. Rossi be chair for 22-23.
Any other nominations from the floor?
You need a second?
Yep.
Then I'll second. For Anthony.
No other nominations? Mr. Rossi, would you accept the position of chair? Mr. Anthony Rossi has been acclaimed chair for 2022. And you can come back to the chair, please.
Congratulations.
This is FYI, your video wasn't on.
Okay, Melinda.
Okay. So, Mr. Chair, I've not been advised of any declaration of pecuniary interest. Is there any from the floor? Seeing none, we'll move on to, if I could get a motion for the minutes.
I will move, Mr. Chairman.
I will second.
Thank you. All in favor? Carrie, thank you.
Mr. Chair, I think I'd just like to go back to the declaration. I know Mr. Greco is late getting here, but I do know that he wants to declare a pecuniary interest in a couple applications, so I think I'll just put that on record right now.
Perfect.
Mr. Greco is declaring a solicitor-client privilege in applications B522, B622, B722, and A422. That would be 43 and 47 Industrial Park Crescent and 439 Great Northern Road. He will not participate in the consideration of those applications. So we'll move on to the rest of our agenda. And for those that have agenda copies, the order is going to be changed a little bit to just follow along, and I'll direct you to where you have to go in your agenda binders. So first of all, we're going to hear applications B522, B622, B722, and A422. They're all related. Mr. Joe Bishalia, solicitor for the applicant, is in attendance and he'll speak to the application. I'd just like to briefly give the committee a summary of what the applications are about, and then we'll deal with each application on an individual basis. And I'll ask for a motion for each application. B522, which is 47 Industrial Park Crescent, intends to convey a 3-meter strip of property. And if you look at the sketches in your agenda that are colored, keep moving to your maps. Maybe go to
Is that one?
go to tab 7,
7. Okay.
7?
and you'll see the sketch in tab 7 that has the blue and purple color and yellow. So look at that right there on your left, Mr.
Mhm.
Chair. Look at that sketch while I'm describing the application, please. B522 is 47 Industrial Park Crescent, intends to convey a 3-meter strip of property, and you'll see it there in purple, and attach it to the easterly abutting property owned by 43 Industrial Park Crescent, which is in blue. B622, which is 43 Industrial Park Crescent, will then convey both the aforementioned 3-meter strip together with a portion of their property being approximately 1,550 square meters in size, and it's there in blue on that sketch, and convey it to the easterly abutting property known as 439 Great Northern Road, and you'll see it hatched in yellow and it's in white. The purple and blue highlighted property will ultimately form a service driveway for a future development at 439 Great Northern Road. Application B722, 439 Great Northern Road will then provide an easement back to 43 and 47 Industrial Park Crescent over the previously combined parcels being the purple and blue, and being 10.668 meters by 161.2 meters in size for motor vehicle and pedestrian access and services now and in the future. Then we'll move to application A422, which is 439 Great Northern Road, and it's a variance request to reduce the rear yard setback to the proposed loading dock only. So if I can bring the committee's attention then now to the individual applications. And again, Mr. Bishalia, solicitor for the applicant, is participating and will be available to make comments or answer any questions. Application B522 is an application from Christina Rosario Cachemilio, who own 47 Industrial Park Crescent. It is located on the south side of Industrial Park Crescent, approximately 135 meters east of the Industrial Park Crescent and Great Northern Road intersection. It is designated industrial in the official plan and is zoned M2 medium industrial and is subject to site plan control. The applicants are seeking the committee's consent to sever the easterly portion of the subject property fronting on Industrial Park Crescent, being 3 meters by 70.1 meters, and convey it to the easterly abutting property as a lot addition. The intent of the application is to change the shape of the subject property to facilitate its subsequent consolidation with the rear lands known as 43 Industrial Park Crescent, and to assist with the land assembly for driveway purposes in favor of 439 Great Northern Road. Notice of public hearing was issued by personal mail, posting on the city website, and by posting a sign on site. As part of the application review, this proposal was circulated to internal departments and external agencies for their review. Planning, engineering, legal, fire, PUC, Public Works, Sault Ste. Marie Region Conservation Authority, and Bell Canada Right of Way had no objections. Engineering staff advised that the owner should submit a grading plan that demonstrates that the entrance to Superior Marine can meet grading standards for driveways and that the easement can be supported. Grading, servicing, and stormwater management will be reviewed as part of the site plan control. PUC services advised that although PUC has no objections with any of these 4 applications, they do advise that there is an existing 12.47 kilovolt overhead power line that traverses lots 43 and 47 Industrial Park Crescent. One segment of the power line is owned by PUC Distribution Inc., and the other is the owner of 42 Industrial Park Crescent and provides electrical servicing to the building on that lot. PUC requests that as a condition of the above noted severances proceeding, that an easement in favor of PUC Distribution Inc. be established as applicable to allow the continued access to the overhead power line. That an agreement or easement as applicable be established between the 3 involved property owners that allows the private line assets to continue to remain in their current location. Alternately, that the servicing be relocated to the satisfaction of all affected property owners and PUC Distribution Inc. Considerations for the committee are: there are no objections to the request. The proposed conveyance satisfies official plan policies and the zoning bylaw. For consideration is engineering's request that as a condition of approval that a grading plan be prepared to the satisfaction of the municipal services engineer, which demonstrates that the entrance to Superior Marine can meet grading standards for driveway, and that the easement can be supported prior to final consent. Of note, all other grading, servicing, and stormwater management will be reviewed as part of the site plan control. As well, consideration should be given to PUC's request to make any approval conditional upon the 3 conditions previously mentioned. Recommended conditions attached to any approval of this application, if you choose to approve, are transfer deed of land, reference plan, drainage plan, PIN abstract, an easement in favor of PUC distribution be established as applicable to allow the continued access to the overhead power line, that an agreement or easement as applicable be established between the 3 involved property owners that allows the private assets to continue to remain in their current location. Alternately, that the servicing be relocated to the satisfaction of all affected property owners and PUC distribution. And while I've outlined those 3 items, at the end of the day, it will be the applicant's responsibility to satisfy PUC, and PUC will let me know that they've been satisfied. certificate application fee, discharge or partial discharge or charge of mortgage, and payment of municipal taxes. And Mr. Chair, those are my comments. And again, Mr. Bishalia is participating.
Thank you, Michelle. Mr. Bishaglio, do you have any additional comments or information to provide the committee?
I think that Ms. Kelly has done a great job of summarizing what we're asking for. In simple terms, the situation is this: in 2018, in principle, Mr. Pino had approval for the development of the Great Northern Road property. It was a site plan agreement entered into. And then as a result of the economy in the city and then COVID kicking in, everything was put on the back burner, so to speak. In the meantime, he still worked on developing this particular site. And as you probably noticed, the RBC Bank was opened up on the front end of the property. And now he plans to develop this spring, all is approved, the back portion, if you will, to relocate the Pino store, a new store, in addition to what he has. In order to deal with that problem with elevation, he thought it wise to enter into an agreement with Mr. Cochimilio and Superior Marine. He has an agreement of purchase and sale to purchase the property, which will give him 35-foot driveway basically behind the building that he wants to build, which will be the area in blue and with the addition of the purple area. That will facilitate trucks to go along the back end of the property to access the, I guess that'd be the south side of the area for a loading dock. That will make it much easier than what had been planned initially, and that was to have all of the dock or loading areas off of the industrial park drive. We think that it'll improve the situation by giving us a lot more area to grade the property. The storm sewer drains will be in that area that we are attaching to the Great Northern Road development. And it'll provide a service area for underground power line, underground telephone lines, internet service, and it'll clean up the overhead poles that we have on that property now. I've had conversations with the PUC. Mr. Harden is the engineer on the project, and he's satisfied that we will give them the easement. And I have drafted, for the purposes of the Committee of Adjustments, the language for the right-of-way and the easement that will facilitate Bell Canada, will facilitate the in-ground sewage, sanitary sewers, and any in-ground services that we need. Also, the drainage control that will be necessary. I think it's an enhancement over what we had there before. I am here to answer any of your questions or concerns.
Thank you. Committee members, any questions?
To Mr. Vasselli, do you understand that you're talking of going underground instead of overhead?
There may be a combination of both. Is that Mr. Nacarado? Who was
Thank-
asking that question?
You did discuss this with the PUC?
I have had conversations with Mr. Harton, and the conversation that I
Oh.
had with them,
I'm sorry, did you mention that you had discussed this with the PUC?
I did. I spoke with Mr. Harton this morning. We received a letter from the PUC through Ms. Kelly yesterday. I spoke to Mr. Harton. I told him what the plans were, that there would be an easement. And Ms. Kelly, you can indicate the nature of the language of the easement, which will provide direct easement to the PUC distribution.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vasselli, for that clarification.
Thank you. Melinda, did you have any question?
Yeah, no, I didn't have any questions after Mr. Bisalia talked. This is Melinda McGregor. I just found that your description really helped to clarify a few things with me. Just I was thinking about the easement and everything, so I appreciate your comments.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak to this application?
Mr. Brown has raised his hand. Mark
Okay.
Brown is in the
Okay.
gallery to speak.
Okay, Mr. Brown, could you give us your full name and your address, please?
He's just a moment, Mr. Brown. Unfortunately, your mic is on mute. There you go. Okay, you're good to go.
Hi, my name is Mark Andrew Brown, and I live at 18 Mary Avenue, Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario, Peter 6 Bob 5 Victor 5B8.
Thank you.
My concern with is with the easement. To me, looking at the diagram, it creates almost a direct roadway from Industrial Park Crescent, the south side of Industrial Park Crescent, through to Second Line. I mean, I'm even concerned about the exit from the property onto Second Line, because that area is extremely busy already. I mean, there are cars lined up to turn left, heading eastward along Second Line to go northward along Great Northern Road at all hours of the day. So even to have that exit without this easement is something that I'm upset about, but it's something that apparently has been approved previously. But with this easement, although it does seem to facilitate a better, offloading of products for Mr. Pino, which I appreciate and would love to see him do that from Industrial Park Crescent. The fact is that it's creating a roadway without a proper environmental assessment of the entire area and the traffic congestion that it will inevitably create. And not that there wasn't a path to get from Industrial Park Crescent to Second Line already before this easement was created or was proposed to be passed. There was, by going from Industrial Park Crescent up along the north side of the building and then across the east side of the building and through to Second Line. But it was a meandering path. This is a more direct road-like setting. And again, it's being done without an environmental assessment. You are going to have, like Mr. Pino has already at its current location over off of Trunk Road, people cutting through to go to Nicholas Avenue. And it creates a hazard for pedestrians. It creates it's just a hazardous situation. And that's without the congestion that already exists at Second Line and Great Northern Road. So to me, this is something that requires an environmental assessment. I appreciate that Mr. Pino is attempting to improve the logistical considerations of offloading his product and doing it in an efficient manner. But the simple fact is that the truckers, they may leave by Second Line. It may be difficult for them to turn around and go back out to Industrial Park Crescent. And that is going to be just, massive hazard because on the opposite side of Second Line, on the south side of Second Line, we've got Tim Hortons, where people are cutting across in between these long lines of cars that are heading easterly and turning northerly from Second Line. So the creation of this easement, again, creates a roadway. And when you're creating a roadway, you should have environmental assessment.
Mr. Chair, if I could just, maybe for clarification purposes for Mr. Brown, we haven't got to the easement yet. However, the easement is in favor of 43 and 47 Great Northern Road so that they are Industrial Park Crescent so that they can access the rear lands from Industrial Park being their own rear lands. It's not in favor of anyone else. This driveway will exist. The easement is only to grant in favor of 43 and 47 Industrial Park Crescent.
I'm not sure what that means exactly.
Well, it means that 43 and 47 Industrial Park Crescent want to be able to use that driveway to get to the rear of their property.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Mhm.
Can I assist,
Yes,
the chair? Mr. Brown, as it stands right now, before this particular application was brought, the plan was approved by the planning department and the city of Sault Ste. Marie Council, and there is a development control agreement. There was a driveway back there of 25 feet in width in order to permit the vehicles to go to the back of the property and around the proposed building. So that's already in place, and that was part of the original site plan in 2018. When Mr. Pino looked at the elevation areas and the drainage that we have to provide to make sure that the property is properly drained, it also takes into account the lumber yard that's on the other side of this property. It made more sense to add another 10 feet to the width of that area so that we could grade the property and you wouldn't have to build retaining walls and so forth. So as a result of that, Mr. Pino with Superior Marine and Mr. and Mrs. Cochimilio entered into an agreement of purchase and sale. He's buying those two properties through another company and other parties involved. And to accommodate the wider area, the better grading for the development, we've added that 10-foot piece. In doing so, the PUC, Bell Canada, and so on, say, well, we want to make sure that we can service 42 and 45 Industrial Park, which is Superior Marine property and the old Ross's Auto Body building with hydro and with services. We want to have the utilities and an easement to be able to do that rather than having to have congestion and having problems to service those two properties. So the easement is not a public easement. It's for those two specific people who are selling that property. But there's already in place a driveway there that was approved, subject to a traffic study, subject to controls with respect to the lights at the Walmart and the bank property is now. All of that was done. So it's not going to make it any worse or any different by allowing the severance and the easement for those services to those two limited properties. I hope that assists you in assessing it. In terms of all of the assessments, environmental, otherwise, those were done back before 2018, and even in 2018, this does not add to the traffic at all. If anything, it makes it easier.
Yeah, I certainly appreciate that added information, Mr. Bisceglia, but my objection still stands, whether I'm using the correct terminology or not. I wasn't aware of any planning applications or at the time at which this essentially public roadway was created between Mr. Pino and the planning department. And so my objection still stands. I think their traffic studies are flawed. I live in this area. Mary Avenue is just off Sackville. And, you know, I experience this anytime I go out in that direction. And it's going to be exacerbated by, you know, the traffic that comes out of Mr. Pino's highly successful, you know, retail operation. I mean, it will be fantastically successful, and it will be extremely, you know, it'll congest the entire area to the point of, you know, it'll become a gauntlet that nobody can get through. And I think the whole thing needs to have a look at, because I think the planning department was, in my opinion, incorrect in allowing that type of roadway. It's a road. I mean, there's no denying it. It's a road like the road that exists on Mr. Pino's current property that goes from Trunk Road to Nicholas Road. And it is dangerous over there, and it'll be, disastrous over here, in my opinion. And so that's my objection.
Well,
Thank you.
So, Mr. Brown, if I could record correctly, are you objecting to this application B522 for 47 Industrial Park Crescent? I know you spoke about the easement and the public roadway, the application itself. Are you voicing your objection then?
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure what I'm objecting to, but.
Well, it seems you were objecting to the easement. And the application itself, this particular application is to convey a 10-foot strip to attach to the abutting property, along with the easements for PUC and utilities.
No, I'm not objecting to that.
Thank
Okay,
you.
okay, thank you. Committee members, any questions of the applicant
I don't have any.
or Mr. Brown? Oh, sorry, one more, please.
No, I
Art?
want to thank Mr. Brown for his comments, but I'd like to ask Mr. Visalia if he's in favor of all the recommended conditions attached to the approval of this application.
We have no issues with those conditions, Mr. Galatzi, and to the chair.
Thank you.
What,
And- Go
uh,
ahead.
you're not asking for,
No, I'm gonna,
Okay.
I'm gonna see if anybody has any other questions. Not
No.
seeing there are none. I'm gonna
I will,
close the discussion, and then I'm gonna ask for a motion.
I will move, Mr. Chairman, that we,
Thank you. Seconded
I'm
He's
gonna
gotta
second.
say
with
what
the
he's-
conditions.
with the conditions, yeah, and considerations.
And I'm
Seconded by
gonna
Melinda.
second.
All in favor? Carried. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move to item 2 on the agenda. The owners of 43 Industrial Park Crescent. Again, it's located on the south side of Industrial Park Crescent, approximately 132 meters east of the Industrial Park Crescent and Great Northern Road intersection. It is designated industrial in the official plan and is zoned M2 and medium industrial and is subject to site plan control. The applicant is seeking the committee's consent to sever the easterly portion of the subject property fronting on Industrial Park Crescent, having a width of 7.6 meters for a length of 70.01 meters, then widening to 10.6 meters for an additional length of 91.16 meters, and having an approximate area of 1,550 square meters. The proposed severed parcel is to be conveyed to the easterly abutting property known as Civic Number 439 Great Northern Road as a lot addition. The intent of the application is to combine the proposed severed parcel with that proposed in the previous application being B522 to facilitate the provision of a service driveway to the loading dock at the rear of the proposed new retail building at 439 Great Northern Road. Again, notice of public hearing was issued by personal mail, posting on the city's website, and by posting a sign on site. As part of the application review, this proposal was circulated to internal departments and external agencies for their review. Planning, engineering, legal, fire, PUC services, public works, Sault Ste. Marie Region Conservation Authority, and Bell Canada right-of-way had no objections. Engineering staff advised that the owner should submit a grading plan that demonstrates that the entrance to Superior Marine can meet the grading standards for driveways and that the easement can be supported. Grading, servicing, and stormwater management will be reviewed as part of site plan. PUC services commented, as I've previously stated. Considerations for the committee are there are no objections to the request. The proposed conveyance satisfies official plan policies and the zoning bylaw. For consideration again is engineering's request and the PUC's request. Of note, all other grading, servicing, and stormwater management will be reviewed as part of site plan control. As well, consideration should be given to the requests from PUC that were previously mentioned. Do you need me to reiterate?
No, I don't think so.
Recommended conditions attached to the approval of this application are transfer deed of land, reference plan, drainage plan, PIN abstract. An easement in favor of PUC Distribution Inc. be established as applicable to allow the continued access of the overhead power line. That an agreement or easement as applicable be established between the 3 involved property owners that allows the private line assessment assets to continue to remain in their current location. Alternately, that the servicing be relocated to the satisfaction of all affected property owners and PUC distribution. And I would mention in here that, yes, Mr. Bishelia has formulated a condition that would address those, and that will quite possibly be satisfactory to the PUC. Certificate application fee, discharge or partial discharge of mortgage, and payment of municipal taxes. And those are my submissions, Mr. Chair. And again, Mr. Bishelia is still in attendance to speak to the application, and I believe Mr. Brown is still in attendance as well.
Thank you, Michelle. Mr. Bisheglia, do you have any further additional information or comments for this application?
Covered prior, but I'm prepared to answer any concerns or questions.
Joe, we can't hear you.
I said that I don't have any additional submissions, but I'm prepared to answer any questions or other concerns raised by the application.
Okay, so we'll do it one at a time. Any questions for Mr. Bisheglia in regards to this application by committee members? None? Anyone?
I have
Mr.
none.
Sorry, Melinda?
I don't have any because a lot of the answers that we talked out in the last application transfer over.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Brown? Do you have any additional information or comments you'd like to make for this application?
I'm sorry, I wasn't paying attention. I'm sorry. Is this a different application?
It is, sir.
And what's the substance of the application?
Do you want me to repeat?
Yeah, I think you should just repeat.
Mr. Brown, in this application, and I know that you have a copy of the schematics. Are you looking at that one diagram that shows the purple and blue
Yellow?
on the schematic?
Yeah, I had seen it.
Okay, if you look at the blue part, that's part, this application, that blue piece, that strip that's on that schematic in blue,
Mhm.
the applicant is requesting that that be conveyed and added to 439 Great Northern Road. So this combined with the purple previously approved by the committee adds that extra 10 feet to that 25-foot driveway.
So I'm looking at the picture and it's right up against some yellow, is that the building?
That's 439 Great Northern Road. So that purple and blue, if this application is approved, will attach to 439 Great Northern Road.
And so it abuts the building and there was no setback previously?
Well, it will be all one piece of property.
So am I,
Perhaps I can assist.
sorry, go ahead.
Can I assist Ms. Kelly and the chair?
Mr. Bisheglia, go ahead.
Yes. Just so that we're aware, that building was back 25 feet before. Mr. Pino wanted to move the building a little bit further back in order to deal with the elevation issues that I discussed earlier. So he bought or is buying the property in the back, and he's increased the setback from 25 feet to 35 feet, which was used for a driveway before. That's why I said to you, there was always a driveway there of 25 feet. We've now made it 35 feet to deal with the elevation issues. And if you looked at the site, you know what I'm talking about in terms of Great Northern Roadside being much higher than in the lower area of the Industrial Park Drive.
Right.
So that makes it a little bit easier and safer, quite frankly, so that the vehicles or pedestrians are at an angle in the wintertime and so on for plowing and what have you.
And it helps out home hardware, is that correct? Are you saying?
I don't think it helps that whole area being drained because Mr. Pino now has to put in all in-ground and above-ground drainage system and holding tanks in order to deal with the Great Northern Road issues of water control. So it helps that whole area, it cleans it up, quite frankly.
Yeah, I don't have any objection to this application, no.
Thank you, Mr. Bisheglia and Mr. Brown. Committee members, any questions of either Mr. Bisheglia or Mr. Brown with respect to this application?
No question.
None? None?
None?
Okay, I'm gonna call the discussion closed. May I have a
I'm gonna-
motion?
I'm gonna,
Thank you with the
Want a motion?
considerations. Thank you, Melinda. Seconded, please,
I'll second.
by Wayne. All in favor, please.
Aye.
And carried. Thank you.
Now, if I could bring the committee's attention to tab 8 on your agenda, which is application B722. Again, Mr. Bishalia is here representing the applicant. The applicant is 510127 Ontario Inc. They own 439 Great Northern Road. It is located on the easterly side of Great Northern Road and fronts on Second Line East, Great Northern Road, and Industrial Park Crescent. It is designated commercial in the official plan and is zoned C5 shopping center and is subject to site plan control. The applicant is seeking the committee's consent to convey an easement and right of way over the most easterly portion of the subject property fronting on Industrial Park Crescent, being 10.668 meters by 161.20 meters in favor of the easterly abutting property known as civic number 43 and 47 Industrial Park Crescent. The intent of the easement right-of-way is to provide motor vehicles and pedestrian access to the rear land described in Part 2 of 1R 8306, as well as services now and in the future to the said property. Notice of public hearing was issued by personal mail posting on the city's website and by posting a sign on site. As part of the application review, this proposal was circulated to internal departments and external agencies for their review. Planning, engineering, legal, fire, PUC, Public Works, Sault Ste. Marie Region Conservation Authority, and Bell Canada right-of-way had no objections. Again, engineering staff submitted the same comments as they submitted in the previous two applications, as did PUC Services. Does anyone need me to reiterate those comments?
I don't think so.
Mr. Brown, do you need them reiterated? Seeing none, I'll move forward. Considerations for the committee are: there are no objections to the request. The proposed conveyance satisfies official plan policies in the zoning bylaw. The committee must consider attaching engineering's requested conditions as well as PUC requested conditions. Of note, all other grading, servicing, and stormwater management will be reviewed as part of the site plan control process. Recommended conditions attached to any approval of this application are: transfer deed of land, reference plan, drainage plan, PIN abstract, the PUC and engineering conditions, certificate application fee, discharge or partial discharge of charge of mortgage, and payment of municipal taxes. And again, Mr. Bishalia is here to participate.
Thank you, Michelle. Mr. Bicheglia, any more additional information or comments?
He's muted. Joe, your mic is muted. Okay, there you go.
Apologies, not unless there's some questions in that respect.
None, no comments? Any questions, committee members to Mr. Bicheglia, the applicant?
I have none.
None, thank you. Mr. Brown? Is Mr. Brown commenting to this
Yes,
application?
Mr. Brown has raised his hand to
Okay,
comment.
Mr. Brown, go ahead.
Same address.
Same address.
Yeah.
Yep.
I want to object to this based on my previous comments that there is a de facto road running through the property, and there has been no environmental assessment that I'm aware of to assess the traffic impacts in the surrounding areas of Industrial Park Crescent, Great Northern Road, in front of the entirety of the property, spanning from Industrial Park Crescent, the south side of Industrial Park Crescent, to Second Line, and then along from Great Northern Road to the exit from the property at Second Line. So there's been no environmental assessment that I'm aware of that would support the putting in of this de facto roadway from Second Line to Industrial Park Crescent. That's my objection to this application.
Thank you. Any questions of Mr. Brown by committee members with regards to his objection? Okay, seeing there are none. Mr. Bicheglia, do you have any respondent to Mr. Brown for
Yeah,
that? Or
I just like Mr. Brown to appreciate that the distance between the building and the, I guess, the property line closest to Home Hardware, that is 9 meters, 10 meters, if you will. That's 30 feet. That's hardly a big highway driveway of sorts. It's basically to accommodate that internal traffic. The easements that we were talking about is actually to make very smooth people coming out of Superior Marine and also out of the old Ross's Body Shop property so that they would access that one specific area rather than having multiple driveways coming onto Industrial Park Drive. When I say cleans up the area, apart from the landscape area, the drainage and so on, it funnels everything onto Industrial Park area, a drive in that one area. And it's not a big, large area to go around that property. It's being reduced down to 9 meters, 9.8 meters.
No,
Yeah. No.
that's Mr. Bishelia's rebuttal.
Thank you.
Does the
any
committee have any?
Sorry,
questions?
any questions from committee members, Mr. Bishaglia, before we call the discussions closed?
No, it was.
None? Any? From committee members? No? Okay, the discussions are closed. Can I have a motion?
I'll make the motion to approve this application.
Thank you.
Subject to the conditions and recommendations.
Thank you, Mr. Greco.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Mr. Galazzi. All in favor, please? And carried. Thank you.
I'll bring the committee's attention back to tab 1 of your agenda. And again, Mr. Bichelia is here to speak to this application. The application is a minor variance application, this time A422. The owner of the property is 510127 Ontario Inc., owns 439 Great Northern Road. Relief is requested from the provisions of bylaw 2005-150 as amended to reduce the rear yard setback to accommodate a loading dock for a proposed 7,534 square meter retail building. The proposed building will front on Industrial Park Crescent. Specifically, section 7.2 of bylaw 2005-150 requires a minimum rear yard of 15 meters. The applicant is asking for approval to reduce the minimum rear yard from 15 meters to 9 meters for the loading dock only, not for the entire property. Keep in mind that is for the loading dock only. Notice of public hearing was sent by personal mail to neighboring properties by posting a sign on site and posting on the city website. As part of the application review, this proposal was circulated to internal departments and external agencies for their review. Planning, engineering, legal, fire services, and public works had no objections. Engineering staff submitted the same comments as NPUC as the previous applications. Do I need to reiterate? No?
No.
Considerations for the committee are the proposed rear yard reduction only applies to the proposed loading dock location. There are no objections to the request. Engineering and PUC recommendations are relative to the consent applications only, as mentioned in their correspondence, and would not be attached to this application. And those are my submissions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Michelle. Mr. Bishaglia, do you have any more additional information or comments?
I kind of preempted myself and the board by making reference to it earlier in terms of the width in that area of the loading dock, which would deter, in my view, the use of that as a traffic route, quite frankly.
Any questions from committee members to Mr. Bishaglia with regards to the application?
I have no questions this time, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Brown, are you still in attendance? Call for the public and then
Okay.
close.
Seeing that there are no other,
No, call and see if there's anyone else.
okay, is there anyone else that'd like to speak to this application?
Seeing no one.
Hearing and seeing that there are none, I'm going to call the discussions closed. Can I have a motion for this application, please?
I will move, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Galazzi. Seconded by?
I will second with the conditions.
Thank
No
you.
conditions.
Oh, there's no, sorry.
No, thank you, Mr.
Yeah,
Regular.
thank you.
Thank you,
might
Melinda.
Wish to note that it's for the loading dock.
The loading dock
Okay,
only.
yes,
Yeah,
thank
loading dock
you.
only.
I'm just used to saying that.
Thank you. Can I call a vote, please? All in favor? Thank you.
Thank you.
Carried.
Thank you, Mr. Bishelia.
Thank you very much. I can now go and catch that plane. Thank you.
Application number 2.
Moving to tab 2
What do
on
you
your
say?
agenda, and it's an application A522. Danny Arella is representing this application. Danny, are you in attendance? I don't see you in attendance, so we'll move on. Rafaela Pucci is the owner of 515 Douglas Street. It is located on the southwesterly corner of Douglas Street and Prentice Avenue. It is designated residential in the official plan and is zoned R3 low-density residential. Relief is requested from the provisions of bylaw 2005-150 as amended to increase the maximum lot coverage to legitimize the construction of a 3-meter by 4.88 meter cold storage addition to the south side of the existing garage. It's noted that in 2010, approval increased the lot coverage to 46%. Specifically, section 9.7.2 of bylaw 2005-150 requires a maximum lot coverage of 40%. The applicant is asking to increase the maximum lot coverage permitted to 49.66%. Notice of public hearing was sent by personal mail to neighboring properties by posting a sign on site and posting on the city website. As part of the application review, this proposal was circulated to internal departments and external agencies for their review. Planning, engineering, legal, fire services, and public works had no objections. I'll ignore that, please.
Yeah.
Considerations, the proposed rear yard reduction only applies, I'm sorry, the proposed increase in lot coverage only applies to the cold storage addition to the garage. And you'll note on the sketch, it's a small addition. And if you look at the sketch that shows the building, the Google map building, keep going and your thing right
Yeah.
there. The building on the right is the garage, and that you'll see Xed on the fence there. If you
Yeah.
look closely, that's where the addition is. And those are my submissions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Michelle. There's no one else speaking to the application.
You can ask.
I can ask anyone speaking to this application. Please raise your hand or,
No comment.
okay.
None.
No, committee members, no, any questions or anything with respect to Michelle? None? We'll call the
No.
discussion closed.
I don't have any questions.
Thank you. Can I ask for a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Greco, seconded by
I'll second it.
Melinda. All in favor, please. Carried.
Thank you. So moving forward to item A6 on your agenda, tab 3 on your agenda. Again, this is a combined application. It goes with tab 9. We'll hear them concurrently. We'll hear them concurrently, but one is not contingent on the other. So we'll start with a minor variance. Mobile Glass and Framing Inc. is the owner of 321 to 325 Wellington Street West. It is located on the westerly side of Wellington Street West, between Beverly Street and Carmen's Way. It is designated commercial in the official plan and is zone C1 traditional commercial. Relief is requested from the provisions of bylaw 2005-150 as amended by legitimizing the existing rear yard setback for the most southerly building at 0 meters. Currently, it benefits from a legal non-conforming reduction request. This application is necessitated by the consent application. 13.1.2 is the bylaw requirement, which requires a minimum rear yard abutting a residential zone of 10 meters. The applicant is asking to reduce the minimum rear yard abutting a residential zone to 0 meters. For the committee's information, the building, well, I'll let you know in a bit. Sorry about that. Notice of public hearing was sent by personal mail to neighboring properties by posting a sign on site and by posting on the city's website. As part of the application review, this proposal was circulated to internal departments and external agencies for their review. Planning, engineering, and fire services had no objections. The request is intended to recognize the structure location as it has existed since early 1969. Legal nonconformity came in for things that were established prior to 1968, and the closest the applicant can determine is this building was established early 1969, so it just missed the legal nonconformity, but obviously wasn't contravening in the bylaw at the time, or wasn't picked up as contravening the bylaw at the time. This is simply to correct this, recognize it before the next application that we'll hear moves forward, just to clean it up. And those are my submissions, Mr. Chair, and I don't believe anyone is in attendance to speak to the application. Oh, sorry, Steve Shoemaker is in attendance and he's representing the applicant on this. Steve, are you there? Yep.
I
And
am
there's
here.
Steve.
Good afternoon.
Thank you, Michelle.
committee.
Mr. Shoemaker, any additional comments? Or information?
No, we've worked closely with the committee. We've worked closely with the city departments as well, both directly and indirectly. And we're looking to ultimately achieve here what I think will amount to a good result from a planning perspective in respect to the three properties, 141 Allenside Road, 129 Allenside Road, both. which would be-
Steve, sorry if I could just interrupt. We're dealing with the 321, 325 Wellington Street application at the time. I know you're representing all
Oh,
of them.
sorry, I was.
That's
I-
okay. We're just dealing with
sorry,
the,
321 I'm handling for, yes.
we're dealing with the minor variance to that building at
No,
0
no
meters
other
to the
comments on
property
that
line.
one. I apologize.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that have any comments?
No, no comment.
Seeing there are none, I'm going to call the discussions closed unless committee members have any comments. Mr. Galazzi,
I will move approval.
motion by Mr. Galazzi to approve, seconded by,
I'll second.
thank you, Mr. Greco. All in favor? Carried. Thank you.
I'll take you now
Nine,
to
tab nine.
item or tab 9 on the application, and this would be mobile glass and framing again. Application B822, 321, 325 Wellington Street West. The applicant is seeking the committee's consent to sever the northwesterly 1 meter by 33.5 meters of the subject property and convey it to the abutting northerly property known as 331 Wellington Street West as a lot addition. The intent of the application is to legitimize the 1957 conveyance of title to this parcel, which was registered without the required consent approval. Notice of public hearing was issued by personal mail, posting on the city website and by posting a sign on site. As part of the application review, this proposal was circulated to internal departments and external agencies for their review. Planning, engineering, fire, and Bell Canada right-of-way had no objections. There are no objections to the request. The proposed conveyance satisfies official plan policies in the zoning bylaw. The request seeks to legitimize a conveyance that took place in or around 1957 without the benefit of consent. Recommended conditions attached to the approval of this application are transfer deed of land, reference plan, PIN abstract, certificate application fee, discharge or partial discharge of charge or mortgage, payment of your municipal taxes. And again, Mr. Chair, this simply seeks to clean up an anomaly that was
yeah.
created in 1957, and Mr. Shoemaker is still
With us.
participating.
Thank you. Thank you, Michelle. Mr. Shoemaker, any additional information or comments with respect to this
No,
application?
nothing else regarding Wellington.
Thank you. Anyone out there have any additional comments or none?
I
Okay,
don't,
oh, sorry.
pretty straightforward.
Thank you. Committee members, none, any comments? None? Okay, I'll call the discussion closed. Motion, please.
I'll move the consent.
Thank you, Mr. Galazzi. Seconded by,
I'll second.
thank you, Mr. Greco. All in favor? And carried. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move to, pardon me,
Oh, sorry, is it 8 or 10?
just get me. So we'll move to tab 4 on your agenda, and Mr. Shoemaker, this would be the Allen Side Road application. It too will be considered with tab 10, which is the same property. So tab 10 is a consent application B922. It's contingent on your approval of minor variance application A722. So I think we'll deal with the variance first, and then we can deal with the consent. So Patrick Praisner is the owner of 129 Allen Side Road. It is located on the westerly side of Allen Side Road between Wallace Terrace and Base Line. It is designated residential in the official plan and is zoned M2 medium industrial. Subject to final approval of consent application B922, relief is requested from the provisions of bylaw 2005-150 as amended by reducing the required lot frontage of the proposed severed parcel. Specifically, section 14.2.2 of bylaw 2005-150 requires a minimum lot frontage of 30 meters. The applicant seeks your approval to reduce the minimum lot frontage to 20 meters. Notice of public hearing was sent by personal mail to neighboring properties by posting a sign on site and by posting on the city website. As part of the application review, this proposal was circulated to internal departments and external agencies for their review. Building, planning, engineering, legal, fire, PUC, Sault Ste. Marie Region Conservation Authority, and Bell Canada right-of-way had no objections. Building staff advised that the industrial building has not had a final inspection or occupancy permit. This should be resolved as soon as possible. I can advise the committee that the applicant has been in touch with building division and they're working through this. It's not needed to be a condition of approval. Engineering staff advised that the severed property does not have a separate sanitary lateral. It should be installed, or if there is an existing connection between properties, easement agreements are required. A 3-meter road widening must be conveyed to the city if not already taken. PUC service advised that they require an agreement be put in place between the two parties and registered on title, which would allow the existing overhead electrical service serving the existing residents to remain in place, crossing the newly formed industrial lot. Considerations, there are no objections to the request. Engineering and PUC recommendations are provided for in the consent request. Of note is the fact that while the request is to reduce the frontage requirement beyond the residential development, the proposed severed parcel widens to the full width of the property. So it isn't just 20 meters for the whole length of the property. Recommendation, any approval be conditional upon final consent approval of application B922. And in that regard, when we get to B922, those conditions that PUC and engineering and building mentioned will be addressed as recommended conditions in the consent application. And those are my submissions on the variance, Mr. Chair. The only condition would be that final consent approval is obtained.
Thank you, Michelle. Is anyone speaking to this application?
Mr. Shoemaker is here.
Thank you. Mr. Shoemaker, do you have any additional comments or information for this application?
Thank you very much. This was the one I was thinking was up before, but this will end up being a hopefully good result. It'll clean matters up along there for the shop, which is the large building at the back, and provide the dedicated access to that shop. And then the two residential properties will ultimately end up being standalone residential properties along Allenside Road as well. And we've worked with the city. Again, we've been in constant contact with the committee and with the various city departments. So we look forward to the committee's questions if they have any.
Go ahead, Michelle.
I'd just like to comment, Mr. Shoemaker, I'm sure he means he's been in contact with the committee secretary treasurer and not the committee members.
Right.
Yes.
Thank you. Any questions of Mr. Shoemaker with regards to this application by committee members? Anyone?
This is for the variance.
It's for the variance, not the consent. Consent, tab 10. Anyone? No, is there, okay, none?
For the variance, I don't have any questions.
Okay, thank you. Is there other persons to speak to this application that are out there, Michelle?
Just call on them and if they
Okay,
don't
anyone else have any comments for this application? Concerns? None? Seeing there are none, then I'm going to close the discussion for this application. Can I have a motion, please?
Put forward a motion.
Yes, thank you, Melinda. Seconded, please. Thanks, Wayne. All in favor? Of course, that's with the consent being approved.
Yes,
Thank
it
you.
is. Thank you.
So we'll move to tab 10, which is the consent application being B922. Again, Mr. Shoemaker is participating on this request. And again, Patrick Fraser is the owner of 129 Allenside Road. Subject to the approval of minor variance application A722, which is what we just approved, the applicant is seeking the committee's consent to sever and convey a flag-shaped parcel of property fronting on Allenside Road being 20 meters wide for a length of approximately 115.5 meters, increasing in width to the rear to 64.16 meters to the rear lot line and having an approximate area of 2.389 hectares. The residential component will remain on the retained land. The intent of the application is to provide autonomous title to the portion of land that has been developed as an industrial use by creating one additional industrial lot. Notice of public hearing was issued by personal mail, posting on the city website, and by posting a sign on site. As part of the application review, this proposal was circulated to internal departments and external agencies for their review. Building, planning, engineering, legal, fire, PUC, Conservation Authority, and Bell Canada right-of-way had no objections. Building staff advised that in the industrial building has not had a final inspection. Again, that's being addressed as we speak. Planning staff recommended that development be prohibited from the rear 50 meters from the center point of the rear lot line in an effort to provide a separation buffer between development and the Bennett West Davignon Creek, which is identified as fish habitat. It is also recommended that the property owner plant additional trees along the north lot line where gaps in the tree line exist to the westerly edge of the R2 zone boundary. Maintaining the tree buffer along the north lot line is recommended. Planning staff also note that the subject area is an industrial area with a number of residentially zoned properties. This application will not present any additional compatibility issues that do not already exist. Engineering staff advised that the severed property does not have a separate sanitary lateral. It should be installed, or if there is an existing connection between properties, easement agreements are required. A 3-meter road widening must be conveyed to the city if not already taken. PUC services advise that they require that an agreement be put in place between the two parties and registered on title, which would allow the existing overhead electrical servicing the existing residents to remain in place, crossing the newly formed industrial lot. Considerations for the committee. There are no objections to the request. The proposed conveyance satisfies official plan policies in the zoning bylaw. For consideration is engineering's request for a separate sanitary lateral or easement agreement, and PUC's request for an agreement registered on title addressing the servicing of the existing residents. As well, planning has recommended that the applicant be required to continue and maintain the tree buffer along the northerly lot line of the subject property to the westerly edge of the R2 zone boundary. Recommended conditions attached to the approval of this application are: transfer deed of land, reference plan, provide an additional sanitary lateral or easement to the satisfaction of the Director of Engineering, conveyance to the city of a 3-meter road widening across the Allen Side Road frontage if not already taken, enter into an agreement registered on title between the two properties regarding the existing overhead electrical serving the existing residents, continue and maintain the tree buffer along the northerly lot line to the westerly edge of the R2 zone boundary, a PIN abstract, cash in lieu of parkland, certificate application fee, discharge or partial discharge of charge mortgage, payment of municipal taxes, and those are my suggestions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Michelle. Mr. Shoemaker again.
Thank you very much, committee. Nothing to add beyond what I'd previously said on the minor variance
Okay.
request.
Thank you, Mr. Shoemaker. Committee members, any questions of Michelle or Mr. Shoemaker?
I have one question to
Okay.
Michelle, Mr. Chair. In the considerations, we're asking them to continue and maintain the tree buffer. Is that sort of like being part of the recommended conditions?
Yeah.
It is. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Michelle.
Thank you. Melinda?
I just had a question to clarify. So both of these, right now it's industrial and it's going to be severed into 2 industrial lots?
Yes,
Or
it's,
zoned industrial and then with
they're
this severed?
zoned industrial, but the industrial zoning has a residential component to it. It was residential rural
Oh.
area actually before it was rezoned to industrial.
Okay,
So in order to provide autonomous title to the industrial use from the residential use, the consent is being sought.
okay.
Thank you. Any further questions? Okay, can I just ask, is there anyone else out to speak to this application out there? Michelle, seeing, is there any? No one? Okay. Any further comments by committee members before I close the discussion?
I have none,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Chairman.
I'll call a motion then.
I'll move.
Moved by Mr. Galazzi and seconded by,
I will second with
with the recommendation condition. Thank you, Melinda.
Yeah.
All in favor, please.
Especially the tree.
And carried. Thank you.
Thank you very much, committee. I believe those are all my matters, Michelle, if I may be excused.
I believe those are all your matters as well.
Thank you very much. I'm going to drop off then. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank
Bye
you,
now.
Steve. I believe that's, and now I'll bring your attention to tab 5 on the agenda.
Let's see. Caesar Development.
And Frank and Anthony, these are your applications now. So
Yes.
application B222. Frank Nacarado is representing the owner, Anthony Cesario, and he also is in attendance in the virtually. B222 Caesar Development Inc. is the owner of 522 Allen Side Road. It is located on the east side of Allen Side Road between Second Line West and Third Line West. It is designated rural area in the official plan and is zoned RA rural area. The applicant is seeking the committee's consent to convey 2 additional lots, each being approximately 45.7 meters by 199 meters by 0.9 hectares in size. Further, to convey the southerly 74.3 meters by 199 meters by 0.86 hectares approximately, and attach that conveyance to the abutting property known municipally as 520 Allen Side Road as a lot addition, and that would be the Helene development. The retained parcel will be approximately 45.7 meters by 199 meters by 0.9 hectares in size. The intent of the application is to create 2 additional rural area lots and add to 520 Allen Side Road. Notice of public hearing was issued by personal mail posting on city website and by posting a sign on site. As part of the application review, this proposal was circulated to internal departments and external agencies for their review. Building, engineering, legal, fire, Sault Ste. Marie Region Conservation Authority, Algoma Public Health, and Bell Canada right-of-way had no objections to the request. Building staff recommended that any approval be made conditional upon rezoning the parcel being conveyed to 520 Allen Side Road prior to final consent. Planning staff recommended that the rear or the easterly 20 meters of the retained and severed lands be maintained as tree cover. This will provide a buffer between the sensitive uses that are permitted in a rural area zone and the surrounding non-residential land uses. Planning staff support the building division's recommendation that the conveyed lands be rezoned to M1 prior to consent. Buffer and distance separations can be reviewed in the rezoning process. Engineering staff advised that there is no sanitary sewer and that a culvert permit will be required. Considerations: there are no objections to the request. For the most part, the proposed conveyance satisfies official plan policies in the zoning bylaw. Planning is recommending that the rear easterly 20 meters of the severed and retained lands be maintained as tree cover. This will provide a buffer between the sensitive uses that are permitted in the RA zone and the surrounding non-residential land uses. In order to convey 2 new lots, the portion to be conveyed as a lot addition to 520 Allen Side Road must remain attached to the retained parcel until such time as final rezoning is obtained. This may require that the parcel identified as Part 3 on the submitted plan be designated retained and Part 1 of the said plan be designated severed. And I point that out so that it's on record that while the lot configuration, sizes, everything will stay the same, the submitted plan identifies retained and severed, and that may have to change if the rezoning isn't finished by the time the applicant wants to move forward with the 2 new lots for residential purposes. And I've discussed that with Mr. Nacarado. Recommended conditions attached to approval of this application are transfer deed of land, reference plan, PIN abstract, cash and move parkland, certificate application fee, discharge or partial discharge of charge or mortgage, payment of municipal taxes, final rezoning to M1 zone for the additional parcel to be added to 420 or 520 Allen Side Road, and applicant owners of the retained and severed lands must maintain the rear 20 meters as tree cover. And those are my submissions, Mr. Chair. And again, Mr. Nacarado is here representing the applicant.
Thank you, Michelle. Mr. Nacarado, do you have any more additional information or comments for this application?
Basically, what he wants to do is build 3 residential homes that are conducive with the area. And, we'll create some more money for the city.
Thank you. Committee members, any questions of Mr. Nacarado or Michelle with respect to this application? Seeing there are
I have no comment.
Okay,
Mr.
thank you.
Chairman.
none, seeing there are none, is there anyone else who to speak to this application, please? Please identify yourself by name and your civic address. Michelle, I take there is none. Okay. Seeing there are no one, I'm going to call the discussion for this application closed. May I have a motion, please?
Make a motion to approve the application.
Thank you, Mr. Greco. Second it, please, by
I'll
Mr.
second, Chairman.
Galazzi. All in favor? Motion carried, and thank you.
And I do believe, Mr. Chair, that deals with our agenda, all the matters that are on our agenda. Does anyone have anything else that needs to be dealt with? No?
None by me.
Seeing none, Mr. Chair, you can
Adjourn.
adjourn.
Thank you, everyone. Adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.